back, Footballers Anonymous. Going into week 9, just got off week 8. I'm Trey Seitz.
And I'm Rob Mattern.
And we're back at you with the weekly video. All right, Footballers Anonymous, we're back with week 8 recap. First, we have Victor's Wildcats against Master Disaster. Victor's Wildcats won 90-78. His top scorer, Calvin Johnson, who blew up this week. It was amazing. And with 36 points. And myself, my top scorer was Bengals defense, 25 points. Amazing, but when you have Julian Edelman with 0 points and Steven Jackson 0 points, you're not going to pull off a win like that.
Okay, the next game is Lucci's Winners against Three Sharks in the Water. Going into the Seattle-St. Louis game last night, looked like Lucci's Winner might have a chance and actually should have won that game, I think, with him having the Seattle defense and Three Sharks with Golden Tate. Golden Tate blew up and had his biggest game of the year with 21. Three Sharks' highest scorer was Drew Brees again, and Lucci's Winners had Aaron Rodgers score 22.
All right, and the next game is Jay Knights against Supermom, 190-91. Kristen was really hoping for Jared Cook to have a repeat of week 1 and Russell Wilson tumble and quote-unquote get injured. So that didn't really happen, but with top scorers Jordy Nelson at 24 points and Matthew Stafford at 26 points, at first Kristen was worried she put in the wrong quarterback with Cam Newton on Thursday night getting 27 points, but the points difference really wasn't there. So it didn't matter in the end.
Yay, Jamel.
With his first win of the year.
Yeah, first win of the year. All right, and the last game from week 8 is Flea Flicker 76, Steelers Wheel 62. I now have the high score for the league this year and also now the low score. So I have the two things to boast. I did get another decent game out of Peyton Manning with 22. Flea Flicker's Darren McFadden hurt both me on the Steelers game and my fantasy game. So, Trey, I'm not happy camper with your Oakland Raiders right now. All right, based on the scores from week 8, here are the new standings.
All right, and here's the playoff seats right now as we are in the standings. It is Three Sharks in the Water, first place. Victor's Wildcats, second place. Lucci's Winners, third place. Steelers Wheels, fourth place. Flea Flickers is fifth place. Supermom is sixth place. Master Disaster, seventh place. And J Knights, eighth place. All right, we're back with the waiver wire report. All right, the first one we're going to talk about is Victor's Wildcats transaction with Andy Dalton being added to his team and dropping Nick Foles. He picked up Nick Foles after his Tampa Bay game, having 29 points. Maybe thought he was going to come back and have a good week, and he didn't. It was a terrible week. He only got 5 points, and he dropped him for Andy Dalton, who came back and got 31 points that week, but he was on the bench. But he's playing him this week, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, Andy Dalton has been a very consistent quarterback this year so far. Having A.J. Green there is obviously a huge threat. And then now Marvin Jones having 4 touchdowns last week. Maybe he's got a solid number 2 wide receiver there as well. So look for good things from Andy Dalton for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think he's a good pickup.
All right, next topic on the waiver wire report is my move when I picked up Sean Sweezum from the Pittsburgh Steelers and dropped Dane Bailey, both kickers. Dan Bailey I've had on my team, and it seems like every week that I had him, he's done horrible. And Sean Sweezum's a guy that I've had my eye on for the last few weeks. When I picked him up, he was 10 for 10 field goals. Had not missed a field goal yet this year. But of course, the week that I pick him up and put him in, he goes 1 for 3, misses 2 field goals, and scores 3 points to Dan Bailey's 17, effectively removing my tie from last week. There's a 14-point difference between those two players and a 14-point difference in my fantasy game. So, oh well, again, bad decisions.
Dan Bailey ranked 6th overall in kickers to Sweezum's 18th overall. Dan Bailey has produced over the past 2 years that I've been playing fantasy. I think at one point during both of those seasons, he was the number 1 kicker in fantasy. I wonder how long he's going to remain on the waiver wire. I don't think it'll be too long. I think there's more potential. Pittsburgh kicker, I'm going to mess up his name, so I'm going to stop there. Pittsburgh kicker to do better in the upcoming weeks as opposed to Dan Bailey. He's going against tougher defenses, and if they can't make it to the goal, they're going to be kicking. So I just think with the next coming matchups that Pittsburgh kicker is going to be the better choice in the end.
Yeah, that's like I said, the 2 weeks before I picked him up, he went 4 for 4 both weeks in field goals, and just not when I had him.
Next up, we're going to talk about Supermom's transaction with Terrence Williams being added and dropping Reggie Wayne with his injury. It's when someone gets injured to the point where they're on IR, you're just going to go out and find your next best player available. So she went wide receiver for wide receiver. Terrence Williams is an up-and-coming young wide receiver. It seems like every year Tony Romo discovers a new wide receiver 3 for them. And now that Miles Austin has been injured, he stepped into wide receiver 2 slot, and he's doing phenomenal things down there. I think they'll trade him away, just like they did with Laurent Robinson. And now Robinson is sitting at home eating Doritos. Maybe him and Hillis got together a few weeks ago, but Hillis is back in the league.
Yeah, it's unfortunate what happened to Reggie Wayne. He had a big streak going as far as games played. But, that's the NFL. And I think Terrence Williams is a great pickup. I think he's going to be a really good wide receiver for the rest of the season.
On that note, also look out for Haywood Bay, who also got picked up by Kristen. Since Reggie Wayne is on IR, Haywood Bay could possibly make an appearance.
Okay, guys, moving into the mentionables. The first player this week we're going to talk about is Steven Jackson, Atlanta running back. They're going up against Carolina this week, who's currently 10th against fantasy running backs. As most of you know, Steven Jackson's been hurt most of the year, and last week scored 0 points in his first game back from that hamstring injury. It's kind of hard to say where he's going to go for the remainder of the season. You kind of got to cut the guy a break. He's been out for a few weeks, and then, I think he had about 11 carries for 6 yards rushing, and maybe a reception or 2, but scored 0 points, like I said. So it's kind of hard to say going into next week, but what do you think?
Week 1, like you said, he's been injured. But week 1, he was healthy for the most part, I believe. I really don't know. He got 11 points. He rushed for 77 yards, had 45 yards receiving. Week 2 came in, got 6 points. That's the week that he really got injured. Really the only thing that saved him was the touchdown. Since then, he's been out. He's had a weak start coming back, but even with Rodgers didn't have a good game. I think the team is just having a hard time right now with everything that's going on there health-wise, and they're not able to get anything started, whether it's the passing or the running game. But I think now that Steven Jackson's back, I think they're going to start bringing it together, hopefully. And I think overall they're going to do better, and I think he's going to do better. What's your predictions for this week?
I don't know. I got to say bad until he gets his legs back under him.
He's got to prove himself.
Mm-hmm.
I say good. Next, we're going to roll into Tom Brady going against Pittsburgh, who is 4th overall against the passer. Right now he's ranked 19th overall for quarterbacks. But for Tom Brady, he has one game of 20 points or more. That's it. And last week he only had 13 completions. But I think he's got Gronkowski back. He's got Amendola back. I think he's going to do a little bit better now. I don't know if he's ever going to completely return to Tom Brady this season like we've seen over the past couple of seasons. I think the receiving core is just too injury prone or too young. But his next game's coming up. He's got Carolina, Denver, and Houston after a bye week. So it's a tough schedule. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, he's a tough one. Like you said, he's currently the 19th rated quarterback as far as fantasy points go, which I don't think anybody saw coming at the beginning of the year. I was actually going back and forth with that 8th pick, whether to take Tom Brady or Peyton Manning there in that situation. I'm glad I didn't. But the last 2 weeks he's had 7 and 6 points versus good defenses, the Jets and Miami. And while Pittsburgh doesn't have a great record this year, their defense has been pretty stingy and like you said, pretty tough against passers especially. I don't know, what's your projection for this week for Tom Brady?
I say good.
Really? I think he's going to do bad.
There's only one way to go from 7 points. All right, next we got A.J. Green. He's going against Miami's defense, who is ranked 2nd overall against the wide receiver. A.J. Green, on the other hand, is ranked 5th overall for wide receivers. And, he's really clicked since him and Andy Dalton came into the league together. They've really formed a good chemistry there with each other. So far, he's had 3 games this season that weren't double digits. And only 4 games with less than 100 yards. And in total, he's had 6 TDs all season. So I don't know what really can go bad for this guy.
It might be the Miami defense that they're facing this week. And it's hard to tell, too, with we had mentioned earlier about Marvin Jones last week scoring 4 touchdowns. Maybe he's going to have to start sharing some of that workload that he was getting originally. With that being said, he's definitely a must start, and he's had 100+ yards the last 3 weeks against good defenses. So it's tough to stop the guy. I don't know. What's your projection for next week?
Well, I'm gonna have to agree with what you said, and I think Miami is what can stop AJ.
Oh, I still think good. He's done too well against too many good defenses. All right. The next one is Aaron Rodgers. He faces Chicago at Lambeau Field next week. Chicago is 18th against fantasy quarterbacks and 28th overall against the pass. So I don't know how else that doesn't spell big day for Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers, I almost want to talk about him the same as we did with Tom Brady. It just doesn't seem like he's the Aaron Rodgers that we all expected. Don't get me wrong, he's doing phenomenal. He's doing a lot better than Tom Brady is. But, he has a game against Cincinnati with 11 points, Cincinnati being a phenomenal defense. And then Detroit, 14 points, Baltimore, 16 points. Some of those numbers are just a little low for the quality of quarterback that he is. And like you said, he's playing Chicago at home in Lambeau. So it's going to be tough. After that, though, I think he's going to be doing a little bit better. He's got Philly, the Giants, Minnesota. That's a pretty easy schedule coming up after that. What are your projections for this week?
I think good.
I think bad. I think Lambeau is going to get to his head. All right, and next we have Kembrell Tompkins. Kembrell's been doing pretty good at the beginning of this season. He had a couple of games where he had good touchdowns. 41 yards against Tampa Bay, but then 2 touchdowns. Then the next game against Atlanta, 127 yards and 1 touchdown. He seemed to be Tom Brady's go-to touchdown guy. And it started to look that way even more with the attempts he was getting in the end zone. But now that Gronkowski's back, Amendola's back, he's fading off big time. I don't know about the rest of this season. They've got so many weapons there that are on the same line, in my opinion. Julian Edelman, him. They play different positions. They both have different strengths, but it's just so many new people and people that can get injured.
Yeah, and you had mentioned before on another video about those New England, New Orleans, Green Bay wide receivers. Those quarterbacks all spread their ball around so much. To have one wide receiver on their team is really difficult. And in New England this year, where Tom Brady is still struggling to get that chemistry with his wide receiving core, you had mentioned all the injuries, so he's got players coming in and out, and the inconsistent play from across the board, but definitely with the wide receivers. I think it's just tough. I don't know how New England is 5-2 right now. I don't get it. How the Steelers can be 2-5 and New England is 5-2. It doesn't make any sense. But it is what it is. What's your projection for Kembrell Tompkins?
I think as long as Gronkowski and Amendola are back.
I think Ike Taylor and the Steelers are too much. All right, next one that we are going to discuss is Josh Gordon. After missing the first 2 weeks, he's listed as the 13th overall wide receiver as far as fantasy points go. He's been fairly consistent, unless I have him starting that week on my team. I don't know. For me, I think is just going to be a must start from this point on, especially with Jason Campbell playing quarterback there.
Yeah, I think that's a great decision. I think Jason Campbell is an underrated quarterback, in my opinion. He had his chance in Washington. He did okay, but what he did in Oakland when he went there, then broke his collarbone, and they just ditched him to the side, I don't agree with. But he's a safe quarterback, in my opinion. So I think Josh Gordon is their best wide receiver right now, and I think he's going to get their top wide receiver points, but I think that also comes with the coverage. Mm-hmm. And so what are your projections for this week?
I say good.
I say Baltimore is going to have a good game. All right. Next, we're talking about Percy Harvin. This one's a little bit different. He is injured still. Percy Harvin's this week they're going to be playing Tampa Bay, who is 14th overall, against the wide receiver. But, like I said, this one's slightly different because now he was expected to play on Monday, and he retweaked his hip. That's what they said on Saturday. So a little bit of a setback. I think we got to keep updated on his player status, but he's a phenomenal weapon to have on your team. Last year and the year before, I loved him because he was a flex player in himself. He would run. He would be running back. He'd be wide receiver. Mm-hmm. He put up great numbers, but I question him coming back to a new system when he hasn't played since last November when he got injured against Seattle.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. It's kind of hard to say with him, but Simeon Rice is out now, so I think that's going to be even more of a push to get him back in, and I think he's going to get a lot of targets as well. That is, if he can come back and play this week and doesn't suffer any more setbacks. But if he does play, what's your projection for this week?
I think if he does play, it's the same on my odds of if he's coming back.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of the Steven Jackson thing there.
Yeah, the first week back, I don't know.
That's tough. All right, and the last one that we're going to discuss this week is Matt Ryan. It's been kind of a surprise what's been going on in Atlanta this year, and I know a lot of that has to do with the injuries to the wide receiver position. But like I said, it's still difficult to say what exactly is the issue there. Matt Ryan has had a decent year. I mean, he's ninth as far as fantasy quarterbacks go, but facing the Carolina Panthers this week, who are the second overall against fantasy quarterbacks, and with them struggling, I don't know.
Matt Ryan is still ranked ninth overall for quarterbacks. Week 1 through week 5, he had 2 touchdowns every single game. But really, since Roddy White's been out and Julio Jones has been out, he's been hurting. He hasn't really been doing too well at all with them. Their upcoming games, they play some tough games. They play against Seattle and Tampa Bay, New Orleans, and Buffalo. I don't see an upside here anytime soon. And with the possibilities this team had, I feel bad for Atlanta right now. I feel bad for Gonzalez. This is going to be his last year. He's not going to come back again.
Right.
But the way they looked before the season started, I would have bet money on Super Bowl for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your projections for this coming week for Matt Ryan?
Unfortunately, I still think bad. I think they're going to have a tough time turning things around. Not that they can't. I think that they could, but
they have the players there to do it. I think it's mental right now, and he doesn't trust anyone other than Roddy White and Julio Jones. All right, and we're back with bold predictions. I'm going to give myself a loss this week, so now I'm 1-1.
I definitely had a loss. I picked Miami to beat New England, and first half of that game looked like I was right, and then some bad calls and lots of people on Facebook saying the NFL is rigged, and I was wrong.
Well, my bold prediction for this week, I'm going to really cut it down because I'm predicting too much with one prediction, and I don't like that. It takes down my chances of getting it right. So I'm going to cut it back this week. I'm going to do Oakland over Philly, and we'll even use the over-under points. Right now, they're giving Philly 1 point.
My bold prediction is I think Minnesota is going to put something together this week at home. They've been on a downward spiral here the last couple weeks. I think it's just going to be one of those games. They're going to go out and they're going to beat the Dallas Cowboys at home.
All right, we'll see next week how we're doing with our bold predictions.
All right, guys, moving on to the Week 9 matchups. This is a repeat of Week 2 games. First one we have is Steelers Wheel against Three Sharks in the Water. Obviously, Three Sharks won the last matchup. The final score was 109-95. See if I can hand him his first loss.
After that, we're going to talk about Jay Knights and Victor's Wildcats. Ending score was 108-79. Obviously, at that point, Jay Knights was the loser because he was losing every game. But now he does not have Julio Jones. So he was the top scorer last time when they met, and he is no longer there. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, next one is Supermom versus Master Disaster, the rematch of the Seitz household. Last time, Master Disaster won 100-77. But his top scorer again there was Michael Vick, who is not going to be available here. He had 34 points in that game, which was the difference in the game. He won by 33. Michael Vick had 34. So see what you can get for your quarterback.
Yep. All right, and the next one is Lucci's Winners against Flea Flickers. This one was a close one last time with Lucci's Winners at 116 to Flea Flickers 113. We'll see if Matt Ryan can produce 22 points like he did that game, or if Aaron Rodgers can do one of his top scoring games of 35. All right, guys, that's it for the Week 9 video. We'll see you all next week. I'm Trey Seitz.
And I'm Rob Matter.
You have a good week and good luck.
Get rid of that cow lick.
I look professional. Matthew Barrett might watch this video. Insert cool name. Alright, that's terrible.
Or big rebuttal. I like big rebuttals and I cannot.
Alright. Insert name here.
It's been kind of a surprise, as we mentioned down the.
You can cut that last part out. I totally made a bad choice of eating those butter toffee peanuts right before we did.